both the HR teams of Biocon and Syngene for interacting with all of us. Now we have an informal panel interaction session regarding the career guidance with respect to the academia and industry with respect to the biopharma sector. So we have an esteemed panel. The first panel member is Mr. Shrihas Thambe. He is COO, Chief Operating Officer at Biologics Biocon. Second panel member is Dr. Dhananjay Patankar, who is Vice President Biologics and Pharmaceutical Department Division at Syngene International Limited. Third panel member is Professor Utpal Tatu, who is Professor, Department of Biochemistry at IISc. Fourth panel member is Dr. Sandeep Mazumdar. He is Vice President at Indus Pharmaceuticals Limited, Biopharma Division. And the last panel member is Ms. Kavita Rodriguez, who is CEO in Zumidor Biologics. This panel session will be moderated by Dr. Narendra Chirmule. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let me just get a show of hands. How many of you are looking for jobs? Oh wow! Fantastic. Who are looking for jobs? Well, more than 60% of them raise their hands. So actually the session it's good. So if you can, Ratish, do you mind if some of the people sit on the sofa over here while we are up here? Or the organizers? Can they come? Because you are very far away. Please, sofa pe aake baitho. If we are close by, you can actually have better conversation if you have more eye contact. Please come. शांत से बैठो. दो सोफे हैं, मतलब आगे पीछे. आराम से नीचे भी बैठो तो चलेगा. जॉब ढूंढ रहे हो, इससे अच्छा मौका नहीं मिलेगा तुमको जॉब मिलने का. Come. Great. Thank you for coming up front. Let's ask the panel. Let's ask these people a few questions on just general topics. So, how many? Let's ask this sensitive question, and you just go raise your hand if you feel courageous. How many of you have been looking for a job for more than 5 years and not found it? So no one. Great. So everyone's found a job within the last 5 years. How many people have been looking for a job for the last year or so, and no one has responded to them? तुमने CV भी भेजा है, कोई reply नहीं करता, ऐसा कोई हुआ है? नहीं हुआ? फिर क्या हुआ? सबको job है? फिर maybe we should not have this panel. अगर job नहीं चाहिए. So maybe some of you can comment to us, because we've been out of the looking for job market scene for quite a long time. So we don't know what the job market looks like today. I don't know, we actually don't know what your problems are. So what are the problems? Can you sort of articulate what your problems are?
Yeah, I was looking for a job for the last 6 or 7 months. So I have applied for many jobs, but as I'm a fresher, so we've been in the shortlisted for interview, after interview. So they were more looking for an experienced guy. And so
we will respond to all of these one at a time, but I just want to get feedback from everyone. You can say, it might, thank you for sharing. It can be your own problem, but it could be your friend's problem also. Please share your friend's problems. So what other problems are there in not getting a job? Freshers is one. Any other problems that you're seeing? Any other problems you've seen? What problems do you have? Because you know what's going to happen? Can you hear me? Yeah. No, wait, we'll take some other people also. I'll come back to you. Look, take the microphone and say your name.
Hi, I'm Shruti. I'm a student of ICT.
Okay.
I'm in final year MTech.
Okay.
But what I feel is students lack the required skill set according to the requirement of the company. So that is why we are not getting jobs.
Okay. You just give up. Any other thoughts? Because you know what? Yeah, go ahead.
So, I'm Srishti Tiwari. In addition to saying what I feel
Okay, thank you for sharing that. I'll just give the mic to someone. Any other? So what I'm trying to do right here, please share your thoughts, because if we don't know what the problem is, we can't solve it.
It's a very good evening to the panel. My name is Vaibhav. It's not a problem as such, but I'm a person with a pharma background, like a formulation background. So I wanted to know if there are any opportunities for the pharma people as well, like the formulation people as well. So,
Okay, good. You had a comment. Someone here had a comment. Yeah, okay. Any other? Let's try to articulate what the problem is, and then maybe we can.
Good evening. Good afternoon. I am Ashish Srivastava. For me, I have a problem like, is it necessary that your study background matters with the required profile, job profile? Because I have done PhD in some other area and I would like to work some other field. So, is it necessary to?
Okay, thank you for sharing. You had a comment. Just give the mic. And this is Kavita. She's joining us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My name is Harish. After my master's in biotechnology, I got an opportunity to work in a plant tissue culture laboratory at Reliance Lab Sciences. It was a project which was funded by Department of Biotechnology for deep palm tissue culture. So after that project, it was a 3-year project. After that project, Reliance shut down the tissue culture facility, and because they wanted to concentrate only on biotherapeutics and not on the tissue culture thing. Then getting an opportunity in tissue culture, I think, was very difficult. So I thought I want to change my career, because biotechnology is a very big field. It has application in pharma, agriculture, environment, all of us know.
Sure.
So pharma is something very demanding. So I couldn't get entry in pharma because my experience was in tissue culture, plant tissue culture, which has nothing to do with pharmaceuticals. Then I thought I did a management course in pharma management, an SIS College of Management. Even then, I didn't get an entry because we had worked in tissue culture. Now after that, you did management. Then getting an entry is very difficult. But finally, I got an entry in a company which supplies biopharmaceutical, like chromatography, which is suppliers to from biopharmaceutical industry. A company called Tech Excel, which represents chromatic bioseparations, which we supply.
Just come to the point.
Yeah, the point is we do not get a job what we like.
Agree. Okay, thank you for sharing that. So maybe we'll go to the panel, and maybe each one of you can take on this question. I would say general question, if I can summarize. There were many questions, but let's address this question. How relevant is the education to getting a job in one of your companies? Okay, there'll be more opportunities to do that, but let's address this question, and we'll come back to more questions. We'll keep going back and forth. So let's address this question of is the experience that you got, or the education that you got, whether you're a fresher or an experienced person, relevant to getting a job in a company like one of yours?
Yeah. No, I think it was really nice to hear all those comments, and thanks Naren for setting up the stage this way, because then all of us can understand what the challenges are. Need to put a disclaimer that haven't been in the job market for a while in a way, because for the last 20 years been working, or 23 years in the same organization. So tough to know what trying and applying means, what you said. But having said that, really speaking, when I inaugurated the session this morning or this afternoon, I think it's the common theme which I heard was, we don't get a job. Okay, I think the question needs to be flipped around, and I'll talk about the education part in a bit. Is to say, why are we looking for the job is really the question. It's saying, what is our sense of purpose? Why are we doing this? Because the job or the PhD is actually a means to that end. If we address this as just a means to financing our needs, then it's tough to get. But if it's something that is going to help us achieve the purpose that we're really trying to do, which actually relates to the organization that's trying to work that you're trying to work for, then the chances of success are higher. That's point number one that I would say. The second thing, and I would let the others jump in after this, and that is about the schooling and the relevance of the education. I've been thinking about this a bit. What excellent education institutions like the ICT or IIT or the others do is really kit all of us in the best possible way to be great scientists, technologists, engineers. But it doesn't necessarily provide life skills for everything, because at the end of the day, it's all people, right? Your interview is a 15-minute window to make an impression that you know what it takes to be successful and be a fit in that organization, right? Because your interviewer has 15 minutes to make up his mind, and you have 15 minutes to make that impression, or maybe less. Articulation is not a skill which we think is important, because we believe knowing the science is key, which is true, but if you can't articulate that science, it's a very similar analogy to when Kiran said that just having innovation is not important, making it affordable, which makes it accessible, is important. So knowing it is not important, being able to communicate and making it relatable to why my skill is important to your organization is really what is sometimes missing. But I'll stop here and let the others jump in.
I'm coming a little late, I'm sorry, but so taking off a little bit on what Shreya's already said, and I was listening to an Adam Grant podcast, and he's an organizational psychologist, and I was just thinking, coming from a startup like mine, passion is overrated and necessity is reality. So I completely understand, when you say to what you studied, so to speak, in absolutely amazing institutes like this, to what you go out there in the job markets, really kind of being available. And like Shreya has said, you don't speed date for 15 minutes and decide what you're going to do for the next 5 years. It doesn't, it's not necessary that you would land up ideally in what you wanted to do. Having said this, and having done my second startup now, and having worked in Biocon too, I want to say that there is a necessity that is fundamental, and then there is a need, therefore, to get to it. The filter to use is how many years would you do that to kind of fuel that cause of necessity, versus how much of bandwidth and time that you give yourself, saying this is the time I would cushion it and really kind of do what I am passionate about, etc. So I think there is a time for these two things, and sometimes people, for example, with ICD, you have amazing companies coming here, to do a whole bunch of placements. You're far better off than other institutes where folks would be exactly like you, saying, how is it that I studied a whole bunch of things and I'm not landing my dream job? So I think there is already some amount of privilege, which I think you should very carefully use. That's my two-bit.
Yeah. But before everybody answers the question, I'm going to break the question for various people. So, and if you want to speak something about this topic passionately, please say it now, because then otherwise I'll move on to another question.
Sure, I am Sandeep Majumdar. So I'm from Intas, Biopharma. So I heard, thanks to Narendra for setting up again what Shreya said. So I could get your concerns. We have been interviewing so many people. We have gone through a lot of campus interviews in IITs and a lot of premier institutes. So what my feeling is that, and when we are interviewing for a particular kind of a trade, we want to see something coming out of in your presentation, basically. And as rightly is pointed out by the forum, that window of 15 minutes is too less for that. So what you have to when we kind of go for a campus interview, we already list out what we are looking for. So from that perspective, most of the time, we see that the most well-prepared gets through. Yeah. So the relevance is very important. So relevance to the job profile is something which is, because that 15 minutes you can pitch in your relevance and potentially take the job. And by and large, I am seeing that we freeze our positions, and then again we open up. It happens every 6 months.
in companies. And looking at the attrition rate, I definitely can tell you that there is no dearth of jobs.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So, before Dhananjay does, before Dhananjay, I'm going to get one more question, but Dhananjay, I'm going to put you on the spot. But you are such a good friend of mine, so I'm not afraid to put you on the spot. What are your names? Chandrakant, can you give 2 microphones to them? Chandrakant?
Chandrakant Burle.
And your name? Shruti. Just please stand up. So now you have an exercise to do. Okay? You own a company. This is your company. Okay? And you're going to interview Dhananjay, who has come to an interview for you. Please interview him so that whether you want to hire him or not. Please ask him the right questions. You have 2 minutes, not 15 minutes, you have 2 minutes. And Dhananjay is looking for a job. So please ask him questions. You understand the role?
Yeah. Okay.
No Sarji, he is Dhananjay. You are Sarji.
Yeah, we have an opening for R&D manager. So the work will be in, let's say, polymer developments. So just let us know how you are suitable for this job position, or how you will make relevant your profile to the job description.
Polymer,
polymer development.
Sir, I have done Masters in Chemical Engineering, and my BTech or MTech project was developing a new polymer which has better chemical properties under high temperature reaction conditions. I think my work will be very relevant to your company's requirements.
So, how do you think that you are better than other applicants?
Ma'am, I can't say I'm really better than others, but you can give me a chance and I can prove myself equal to you.
One or 2 more questions and we can go.
Okay. So from your CV, we can see that you have left your previous company. So you have left your previous company within 1 year. So what is the reason, and will you commit us if you left the company, if you join us, and if you left the company?
In my previous company, I was not getting enough opportunity to do what I like, and most of the time I was asked to do very irrelevant and boring things which was not matching my what I want to do in my job. But if I am given interesting work, I can assure you I will stay here a long time.
From your CV, I could see that you have scored less than 60%, which doesn't meet the company's requirements. So how will you cope up the same? How you will meet the expectations of the company?
I mean, our college, to score marks, you have to just mug up everything, and you don't have to really. I like more problem solving, and it is not always the right way to score marks if you are into problem solving, but you are not into mugging up the theory. So I think that should not matter if I am working in a job and there's a problem to be solved.
Right, thank you. Would you hire him? Based on this responses, would you hire him? No! what was lacking? Can you speak into the mic?
Because
there won't email my job yet.
We have given
Okay. So, thank you so much for doing the role play, and thank you, Dhananjay, for being such a great sport. Let's give Dhananjay a big hand. Dhananjay, maybe all of you can speak a little bit about your experiences, and maybe talk about something that I'm very passionate about in terms of career development is what I call inflection points. And some of you may know that I write a lot about this topic on LinkedIn. So in your own careers, what was it that happened in your career or lives that made your careers go exponentially forward? What was your inflection point in your career? And all of you can maybe take a shot at that.
So my inflection point was when I took up a job at Intas Pharma in 2000. I had just finished 5 years in my first job at Vocard after a PhD and a postdoc. And Intas was looking to start a biopharma division, and they wanted somebody to basically lead that from the start. And I was at that time just a bench scientist at Vocard. Somebody recommended my name, went for the interview, I got the job. And when I reached that company, so my title before I went there was a scientist biopharma. And when I went to the company, there was a big sign there saying, "Welcome, Dr. Dhananjay Patankar, Vice President Biologics." And I was actually so embarrassed, I asked them to change my title from Vice President to Head Biotechnology, because I just felt embarrassed that I had 5 years of experience and was being called Vice President. But it was a great opportunity because it was a clean slate for me to set up that organization, and it was what they saw in me and what I could do there was really get exposure to all sorts of broader topics, not just the one area that I was previously working on in the laboratory, but really all across, right from what kind of facilities to set up, what kind of equipment to buy, what kind of products to develop, what organization to set up, how many people, the whole thing. And I think the key to that, getting that job and then eventually succeeding in that job, was just being alert and being curious to understand what's beyond my work area. So when I was in the lab, not just working, doing what I was doing, but really being curious about what other people are doing. If somebody is making a regulatory application, how are they writing that application? What are the issues that the government regulators look at in the application? If somebody was designing a manufacturing facility, becoming curious about what are the issues in a manufacturing facility? How is it different from a R&D lab? So really being curious about what other people around me were doing, I think that was the key, and that's how I got the job, and that's how I could be successful.
Thank you so much. Kavita, why don't you say a few words, then we'll come back.
I like the order in which you're doing this.
Exactly, a little bit surprised.
So I think one of my inflection points, and I can safely say that now, is to quit Biocon. But I think my days in Biocon gave me the rigor that has held me in very good stead, and that's very important. And this is the one thing that I tell, kind of students who are kind of coming out, and we do this a lot of times in startups, right? We have internships in BTech and MTechs coming. We tell them it's really fancy to join startups because you think it's really cool and you have all the time to do this cool stuff. But that's not necessarily true of all startups, and all startups at their infancy stages. Everybody needs rigor, and everybody needs certain amount of grunt work that you put in, and nothing like a big biopharma to do it. The privileged you do get in, like you just previously discussed, you go through the interview process, you prove that you're better than the rest, and then you get in, you already have a step up. You're from ICD, you already have privilege, so make use of it very well. But I think another reflection point that I had in my career was importantly to put in work in a biopharma, and I was very, very privileged to do that. And I continue to be mentored. Mentorship is, I think, very important. And for me, Kiran has been a great mentor, and for that I'm very blessed. The other part of, that key between leaving biopharma and, kind of taking this plunge with a startup, I think that was an inflection point where we saw biosimilars kind of, having a boom back in 2007. There was a glitch between, the number of players who were looking at pure development to, key teams. So that, I think, played a very crucial bit for me in kind of taking that plunge to doing it. That was an important, I want to say, inflection point.
Thank you. Shreyas?
You're not going to do this again. Great.
Now we come to N-1, so we know who the...
It's a little bit of a struggle to understand which was one particular inflection point, but I think if I were to roll back the story and say which was the point that, and I really, you've been generous and kind to me in saying that we've achieved much in our careers. I think the others have. I think there's still some distance to go. There's a lot more to achieve. But having said that, I think the first piece I would say is the time when I was a student here, and I went straight from here to industry for the very first time to Biocon. I would think that was if I just look back, was the inflection point. I was talking to some of the other alumni here, during the day. I was just saying that I had a 45-minute interview, and in that 45-minute interview with our chairman, Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, I spoke for 5 minutes and she spoke for 40 minutes. And I think that was impressive because she took the trouble and the pain to explain to a fresh graduate, somebody who was on the bench doing research, what her vision of the organization was. Okay? And Biocon was going to move from being an enzymes company to move into small molecules. At that time, you talked about formulations earlier, a small molecules pharmaceuticals company, and she wanted to know if I was willing to be a part of that journey with her, right? So to me, an inflection point, and Kavita mentioned it briefly, is finding the right mentor. If you can identify what you want to do with the right mentor, with the right vision, the right sense of purpose, then it allows you to shape your career in a much better way than what you would have imagined early on. At Biocon, I've had the opportunity to do so many various things I couldn't have imagined when I was a student here. Okay? I did things which I did not study. We do not study how to do capital investments. We do not study how to do negotiations for contracts. We do not do legal negotiations. We learn that over the course of our jobs. But that is the opportunity that your organization needs to offer you. So if you were to find the right mentor, and you can find that only if you can identify with that sense of purpose, and then you will find that your inflection point wasn't that one decision, but it's been what you've been thinking of all through. Because you can reflect back 20 years and say, oh, this wasn't really the inflection point. This thinking, and I was just linking the dots. If you look at people who've been your mentors when you were a small kid, to when you were a student, and then as you've grown up, you're probably idols and mentors have similar qualities. It's just that the people have changed, but you are following the same qualities. So if we pick that, I think what follows is essentially what you get to see later on. Not trying to be too philosophical about it, but just having experienced it myself, I believe it's not about chasing a job, it's really about finding the right purpose, and the jobs are available given the pedigree that all of you have here. They will come because that is there in the market to achieve. And this has been my experience.
Thank you, James.
Yeah. So coming to think of what has been the inflection point, I feel there are multiple inflection points in my career. So one of them is that what I think Dhananjay said early on was to be very inquisitive and trying to learn new things as you go along. So ICT definitely offers a very big platform and a very multifaceted education system, whereby it's a very chemical engineering intensive organization, institution, but at the same time some specialty subjects are also ingrained here. So as I work with a lot of engineering companies. I work with Biocon, I work with, now I'm presently working with Intas. So as Shreya said, that every company has a DNA of its own. That's what I thought. And it offers, like for Biocon, there was a lot of leeway in doing lot many things, getting into lot many things and trying out different permutations and combinations kind of. And it also gave me a lot of engineering challenges, which were great motivation for me to take things forward, to take the next leap in the career. Intas, on the other hand, was a kind of very well set up stage, which has a lot of hard work. Incidentally, Dhananjay and his team did a lot of hard work initially to launch a lot of molecules and potentially a very big pipeline. And now I'm kind of commercializing that pipeline. So that was the big motivation, and I will definitely call it one of the inflection points in my career as well.
Thank you all for sharing. So now it's a test. I see, how many of you are writing notes? One person is writing notes. Company needs good documentation practice. If they gave you enormous information and you've not written a single note, please pick up your phones. Let's now summarize what were the inflection points. Can anybody tell us what they said? What would you take home from there? What message would you take home? Give me just words. They said fantastic things. What did you learn? Nothing. Huh? Be inquisitive. Anything else? Good mentorship. At least write these things down. मैं दे रहा हूँ. Note दे रहा हूँ, लिखो. Be inquisitive. Good mentorship. और क्या?
Taking risk out of the comfort zone.
No, being out of the comfort. Where was that? Comfort zone. Mic है ना, अच्छा है. Anything else? What? Yell. Pompous. Vision. Purpose of life. Vision of life. Yes, you should have a purpose. Then, let's take 7 things. These are 4, right? 3 more. Humility. Yeah, I think there was a lot of humility in everybody's presentations. Anything else? 2 more. Courage to take the next step. Yes. Maybe 1 more. Being passionate. Okay, good. So, let's give them a hand for sharing their personal experiences, because I think this kind of sharing personal stories becomes very difficult to extract out of people, right? So let's, for the next 5 minutes or so, ask them any question you want. And just take the microphone. The microphone वाले को थोड़ा काम करवाएं. और next वाला question वहाँ से होना चाहिए, ताकि उसको चलना पड़े.
Sir, I'm a student of MTech DPT, so I have a question. That despite of having the required skill set in biotech field, why is that the salary package of biotech jobs is very low as compared to the other jobs of the other sectors?
Very good. Hey, and is Gautam, the HR folks who presented just now, are they there? No, I think that question should go to the HR then. उसको पैसा कम में मिलता है यार, biotech में, IT से? Anyway, maybe you can take a question. Why do please ask?
Well, I said that despite having the required skill set in biotech field, why does people not get the job
salary?
The salary package that is required?
Okay, so I'm going to give you maybe not a very comfortable answer. See, at the end of the day, the price for anything when you go into a market depends on the demand and supply, right? And salary is just a price you pay for a person's skills. You know, why does a manual laborer get less money than somebody who sits in an office and does maybe not really a very highly intellectual work? That's just a law of demand and supply, right? So over the past few years, or maybe I don't know today's status, but at least 7, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, IT was in a boom. There was a lot of demand, and the salaries were maybe several fold of what engineers used to make. Perhaps that's not true anymore. But I'll say one thing. In your first 2 or 3 or 5 years, it really doesn't matter what salary you make. After 10 years, if you're really good at your job, whether you are in biopharma or any other job, you will eventually reach, a good salary level if you're really good in your job. So in your first few years, you shouldn't really worry about what your salary is, and like it or not, it depends on demand and supply.
Yeah, very good answer. Was that satisfactory? Any other question?
Naren, if you don't mind.
Yes, please. Please.
Just to further add to what Naren said, I think if you were to look back at it and say how many companies in the country really are in this space in a serious way, in the biopharma space, and how much growth is there today, in terms of how many people can they recruit, how much employment can they generate. Then what is it that one brings to the table, whether it's a fresh recruit or whether it's a talent from some other pool. What really one needs to see is that what is the differential that a person can create, because at the end of the day the business has to get a value which can then pass on to the employee and then forward. I think from the time, since you said that you are a student here, from experience I can tell you the numbers have evolved. Okay, maybe from what it was 20 years ago to what it is today, the ability of the industry to allow this has evolved, because there is much more ability to share that wealth with employees, and that's what Dhananjay was talking about. If you were to extend this, because petrochemical probably 25 years ago was in a different place than it is today, it will change now in the next 50 years. Biopharma was different 20 years ago, will change in the next 25 years. So I think it's about understanding the overall context and not just looking at one data point in on-campus placement salaries, and then seeing over the career span, what does that look like? Is this promising enough? And does this look remunerative enough? So that's really the wholesome piece of it.
Actually, what I have seen is that the real worth of an individual gets established in a complex world of biosimilars and Indian pharmaceuticals as well. After you put in about 2 to 3 years of work in the system, and your work gets recognized by your peers as well as your superiors. So there's a lot that you can do after joining, so don't worry too much about the initial salary. Once you get in, you get the platform to do the work, you can then pitch it.
So I want to add, so we can't come for campus placements, they do. When you join them and you get bored, you come to startups. So, but having one filter to that is that if you look at glass doors, glass ceilings, if you look at Mercer reports, etc., I think what Shreyas and Dhananjay were saying, that the points have moved across. Whether today you're looking at AI, cloud computing and all that, saying, that is the best paying, and, therefore, why am I doing what I'm doing? I should have been a different kind of engineer. I think those points have moved. There is an equalization factor. We see it, at least we see it in the startup space. If these people come and farm you guys, we don't. We can only afford to pick up few.
Yeah.
So we know those points.
Yeah. Good point. Good point. Thank you everyone for sharing, and a good question. But before you think about a question, and when the microphone comes, ask it. Anyone have a burning question? Okay.
My two questions are to Dhananjay. Dhananjay, what is the key challenge you face as VP of Biologics of Syngene International? And my second question is, do you miss anything being a bench scientist at that time and now a VP? If yes, what is that?
Okay, my biggest challenge is you don't work hard enough. He works for Syngene, by the way. No, so do I miss being in the lab or bench scientist? Absolutely yes. You know, I may or may not miss running an actual experiment, but certainly miss the excitement of looking at the results and thinking about you know, analyzing the data and figuring out what worked, what didn't work, why it didn't work, and what it could mean from just understanding the process point of view. So you know, you miss that. And this is something I've said often, that unfortunately our corporate hierarchies are made such that you take your best scientists and convert them into an administrator. That's unfortunate. So I've, you know, over the years become more and more of an administrator, and I certainly miss you know, that passion of and excitement of really understanding the science and figuring out you know, what's going on.
I think the second question was challenge. Right? What challenges are you facing or something? That was the first question. So
that's not an interesting one.
Okay. So any other questions? Before another question, let me ask a question of you. So to follow up on some of the questions, that very nice responses that you gave as to think about the value of yourself when you come for a job or a company. So can you describe, maybe all four of you, any person in your organization who started and became a superstar? What was the qualities of this person who became a superstar in your organization in a very short period of time? What did they do to become that superstar? You understand my question? Just take an example. You don't have to give a name. You just have to give the qualities of what made that person that space.
So I'll take that question first.
Yeah.
So when I joined Intas, we had a lady at a very junior level. So she was, I think, senior executive or assistant manager. And we could clearly see she has a lot more skills than that merits her position at that point of time. And after she faced a few audits very bravely, and she had a way of answering to the auditors in a manner which is very, very convincing. So we thought that with a little bit of grooming, she can take up a very high role. And today she is a deputy general manager. She heads one of my verticals in manufacturing. And not only that, she is a very highly sought after lady for all the audits. So that's one success story that I can correlate. And there are many more. Like what common thing that I've seen is that is a very, very earnest desire to do extremely well in whatever you are doing, basically. So that passion has to be there.
Possibly my kind of narrative on this is a little different. I want to be a superstar. I am not. So let me talk about somebody else who is. It's possibly not in the biotech space, but I want to give an example of another startup which did phenomenally well because of the kind of co-learning experiences that they had. And I can give an example of another person in the startup space, Rashi Jain, who heads Onco.com. Having started off in industry, etc., I think she spent some time in Biocon too, industry, etc. When she first did her startup, it was, nobody really thought second opinion in cancer care, is going to be much. It's going to be just another platform, people look up on the internet for second opinion, so why would this be? Today, she has raised monies phenomenally well at really high valuations, and she has people kind of sought after VCs after her. Only because she had this amazing ability to co-learn and the ability to get people on board in a startup that's going to help her. So it's not necessarily that you are the person who is the mover and shaker. The ability to get people around you and therefore, kind of succeed, I think is another parallel to think about.
So one quality of superstars, as you said, is definitely pursuit of excellence. I think that is by far, if I can say, this is the single most important quality that will take you far. if you're just to use the Marathi phrase, patya takne, if you're at work to just kind of get things done and leave at 5 o'clock, you're not going to get very far. If you are worried about whether you're getting a promotion or not, and those things are, I can assure you, they have very short life, those types of concerns. You have to really, you can't compare yourself to others. You have to compare yourself to only one standard, and that is, are you the best at what you do? And that's the only way I think you can become a superstar. Just try to be the best, forget something highly intellectual. If you're just, if you're a typist, are you the best typist that there can be? Can you type at a fast speed without making any errors? So it's just pursuit of excellence, I think, is the one thing that will make you a superstar. You will become what we call as a go-to person, right? You should become that go-to person where somebody says, okay, you have a problem in this area, go to that person, right? You need to become that go-to person, and the only way you can do that is if you are really, really good at what you do, so that you are the man, you are the person. The man, it could be a woman, by the way, but you are the one, right? So follow that. Don't worry about whether you're better than somebody else, whether you're getting promoted faster or slower than somebody else, whether you're making 10% more or less than somebody else. Thank you.
So, in my experience, the qualities that I've seen of a superstar, I think the table stakes, so to say, intelligence, competence of your job, I think those are table stakes, right? That's a given. If you don't have that, then you're not playing that game. But some qualities I've seen are very, very common amongst people who do extremely well compared to those others who also have what it takes to be at that table. And that quality, I would, if I were to put those in 2 or 3 adjectives, one is it's going to be hard-working. You need to be, you just look across the spectrum, whether it's sports, whether it is academia, whether it is industry. Extremely talented people are still extremely focused and hardworking. Without that, there's no Sachin Tendulkar that you can see happening without 12 hours of effort every day. No Virat Kohli without that. You'll never see J.B. Joshi work 2 hours a day. He'll be there 12 hours even at this time. So you do that in industry, it's still the same. Hard work is the quality I've seen in superstars. I've seen the ability to go deep into any topic and willing to appreciate outside of their own space. I'm probably good at one thing, but I'm willing to understand your space and appreciate it. You will see, just to take an example that you can relate, many of the football players appreciating tennis or cricket players appreciating golf. Your ability to appreciate something else with the same amount of interest allows you that latitude, development to do your own art in a better way. The third thing I've seen in superstars is the ability to let go of something, and I think in another way Kavita said the same thing, is be willing to let somebody else do the job that you were doing before, because you realize that there's somebody else better at it, and then you can do something else, because your mind has only finite space to do things, no matter what you think. It is infinite in one dimension, but it's only finite that you can recall. So if you can actually work with people to say that I have better than me, people better than me doing that job, these are the people who actually become superstars eventually, saying I have let go, let somebody else do that job. And they articulate all of what I said in a manner that is cogent, coherent, and people can make sense out of it, whatever strategy they put together. These are things I've seen common across people, not who I've seen up close, but even people you follow in press.
Right. Thank you so much for all sharing. Hopefully you've taken notes. I think they said some really, really good points for you to take into consideration. So let's move to another topic. What books have you read in self-help? Any books that anybody reads self-help books? No? You raise your hand. No? Anyone reads any self-help books? You know what self-help books are like? You know what they are? like Malcolm Gladwell's Outlier. Has anybody read anything? Yeah, speak.
Goal by Eliyahu Golder.
Yeah, can you say anything about the book?
Basically, what the book says is the whole book is about the experience.
Take your microphone very close to your mouth.
The book is about the experience of a plant operator who's basically being told that his plant is going to be shut down in 3 months. He's doing many things to improve productivity and he's trying to meet the demands of his managers. But still, the company does not like his plant and they want his plant to be shut down. So he's thinking about what to do to make sure his plant is active. So he consults a management friend of his who has a PhD in management and he says, what am I doing wrong? And he says, you're not identifying the goal correctly. So what he really goes on to achieve in this book is identify what the business really wants as a goal and he achieves that. So
what is your name?
My name is Kiran Iyer.
And you're from?
The only connection I have to the institute is I did my bachelor's degree here.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Anyone else wants to share a book? Now you know, you can't just tell the name of the book, you have to tell a little bit about the book also.
Hello sir, my name is Atish. The books I read for self-help.
Just one book, you give a name of the book?
Who sold his Ferrari or 5 Club by Robin Sharma. The books.
Okay, and what do they talk about? What did you learn from those books?
Let's say 5 Club, the book gives the particular curriculum by which a person can improve his efficiency.
Okay, thank you. What's your name?
Adesh.
Adesh, yeah.
From IC.
Anyone else? You talking?
Hi, my name is Prateek Gupta. So the book I would highly recommend is Start With Why. It's a book by Simon Sinek. It's a book by Simon Sinek and put the Golden Circle. It's the how, the what, the how, and the why. So it basically talks about the sense of purpose, which Shreyas has been talking. There's this common theme in his, in his conversation. So it talks about that.
Anyone else? Any book? Actually, there are hundreds of books, hundreds, maybe millions of books. Anyone else want? I've actually got like 7 books. We just got 3. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Nagendra. So I'm a founder of a startup. So before joining the startup, I used to spend lavishly. Like I didn't have a thought of how much I spent. After reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, it actually changed me a lot. Economically, how I save now, it's nowhere comparable to how I used to spend before that. So it has changed me completely.
Rich Dad Poor Dad. Thank you for sharing. Any books that you recommend that they read?
I wouldn't say these are self-help books, but I think these are very meaningful and impactful books. I'm a fan of Atul Gawande, and Better by Atul Gawande is an amazing book. The other one, which is probably related, is Paul Kalani's When Breath Becomes Air. These are philosophical books, but they're very insightful as to purpose and where does purpose lead to. So those are my 2 suggestions.
Thank you. Any other book? That's 5 if you were counting. So we have 2 more to go. Anyone else? Yeah?
Hello, myself Tushar. I have read the book which is written by Stephen Covey, that is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, in which they have total 7 habits are mentioned, which change your perspective of mind to look your, like if you are going through one stage, and if you are finding some troubles. So how to get overcome by looking at that 7 habits that mentioned in that book.
Thank you for sharing. One more? Yeah, Dhananjay?
Sir, I'm a movie buff, so let me talk about a movie.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, so my favorite movie that I use in for management lessons is Check the India. How many of you have seen Check the India? Alright, so I don't need to tell you. Almost every shot, every dialogue from that movie I've used at one time or another in my sort of lectures to my team.
Thank you, thank you.
So it's just full of all sorts of things about. I've used that wo 70 minute and that dialogue and how he energizes the women to become sort of play with that sense of purpose and things like that.
I wish Sholay was also a management group, then he could have said, "Kitne aadmi the?" Which can be relevant, right? Interview mein kitne aadmi the? So, any questions? Back to questions. It's your game. I mean, it's your forum to learn as much as possible. Any questions that you can think of? Yeah. Please state your name and.
Sir, my name is Yeshina Stogi. I'm MTech PPT student here. So I want to know, like, to procure any higher position in one of your companies. So is it necessary to have a PhD or a postdoc?
You see them fighting over the mic.
I mean, it really depends on two things. One is if you are looking for a scientific role specifically in research and development, I think it behoves of you if you have a doctoral degree with you. Makes sense to have. Can there be a head of R&D who did not have a PhD? Could be bad. Just to give you a data point. Because see, what it takes is not the degree alone. What it takes is, do you have what it takes to lead that organization? So we've had a head of R&D who did not have a PhD. And he did exceptionally well and he set us up for success. So, but would it help? Yes, of course it would help. Again, let us keep the two things separate. Do not link qualification to success in terms of the material aspects of it. We do not get a PhD to become a head of R&D because like I think Dhananjay mentioned before, there is a tendency to make a good scientist and an administrator, right? Unless you really keep finding good people to do the science, and that allows you to become an administrator or but again, these are really how you structure your career path. If you really want to be in science, then pursue it. Do a PhD and do that. Don't do it because I want to become a head of R&D one day. That would not be the right way.
Anyone else? Good question. Anyone else? Any questions?
Hello sir, my name is Amita. I'm a PhD student here. So I just wanted to know, after getting a good amount of experience, say 10, 15 years, when you reach to a certain position and you feel that you could have done, when you want to take a certain decision and you feel you could have taken this decision in some other way, some different way, but your leadership doesn't allow that thing. So I just want to know from both point of views, as an employee and from employer point of view, so how to retain your employees at that position and from employee point of view as well.
What decision did you said something?
So I mean to say, in case of any decision making, if your opinion doesn't matches with your senior's opinion, so from that point of view, how to.
So I think we should bucket opinion into two baskets, right? If there's, and I want to just be clear so that we understand your question well. If you had regardless of the numbers of experience, but if you have a differing opinion than your supervisor on matters which are related to your view, ethics, integrity, and stuff like that, I think that that's not the place that you should be in. If it doesn't follow your conscience. So that's a very clear case. Let's not confuse that discussion with what you're talking about. I think what you are talking about is a question that I believe that the future should be like this, but your supervisor believes the future is something else, right? I think the most important thing is that the organization should allow for an open discussion first for all views to be tabled. So you should be in a setup where differing views are encouraged. So which allows you to table your view at that forum, which is the right way to do it. And there is no compulsion that everyone's, because somebody's view will not be taken. But it's important to explain why a decision is taken. And sometimes it will mean that it is what you said it was, and sometimes it will just mean that it will not be what you wanted. But you will know why the organizations made that decision, because you were involved in the process. That is how organizations make decisions in a transparent manner so that employees remain engaged. It doesn't mean that every time what I say will happen. But at least I know that when the decision was made, it was made because of these reasons. If you still strongly don't agree with it, you can state it. But once a decision is made, it is the way it should work is we all stand behind that decision. That's how you make a strong organization. You express views before, you debate them to no end, but once you take a decision, then it is the company's decision, your team's decision, and you stand behind it no matter what you thought before you made that decision as a team. That's typically how it should work. That's how it works at organizations I've seen.
So I'd just like to add to that. So when you're having this, as you said, when you're debating how a certain decision should be taken, I think it's, if you can list down, so the discussion should really be very logical and rational. So if you list down what are the pros and cons of whatever you are suggesting, and somebody else lists down the pros and cons, and you roughly agree that, okay, if we do it this way, these are the benefits, these are the risks. If you do it this way, these are the benefits, these are the risks. And usually you get consensus on that, most of the time. Where there's a difference of opinion is that I might think in this path, risk is low, somebody might think the risk is high. On the other path, I might feel the benefits are high, somebody might feel that the benefits are not that high, right? So it comes down to the weightage you assign to each of that benefit or risk. But once you discuss along those lines, now you know that it is not a decision that's being taken arbitrarily. You know that, okay, they think that the risk is high here, you think it's low, but now you can appreciate why they're taking that decision. Once that happens, I think it's easier to accept the decision either way.
How are we doing with time? We're okay? We're okay with about half an hour we have? 5:30? Half an hour, okay. More questions, but before we move, please ask. Give her a microphone, please.
In the NBM workshop which I attended recently, I came to know that most of the biological companies are focusing on or biosimilars, but the bio industry, which is comprising of only 3%, which comprises of enzymes. So, and also Biocon was earlier an enzyme company which has shifted to similar. So why there is a shift? Because I am not from a pharma background, and then I would like to work in an enzyme company. But then the companies are shifting and they are more focused on bio.
Yeah, they're waiting for you to go in and create a space for yourself.
Shruti, right? So Shruti, I think just to put it in context, that market isn't going away. It's still there. And there are companies, Novozymes is the world's largest company which does that. So when Biocon exited its enzyme business, it divested into Novozymes. So that business is still there, very much there. Plus, in addition to industrial enzymes, there are specialty enzymes, which is another space used in pharmaceutical industry, which is where we need it. So it's not like pharmaceuticals or biopharmaceuticals is only the area that companies are focusing on. I think the companies you are looking at are focused on biotherapeutics, if possible.
Okay. Any other question? Okay. There will be lots of opportunities in the next half an hour to ask questions, but I'll also space them in between. Please go ahead. State your name and...
I'm Rushali. I'm from NMIMS University. So my question is like, suppose if someone is working in academics since 5 to 6 years, and if that person wants to change job to industry, then what are the different opportunity, or that 5-6 years of academic experience in academics will be countable in industry if that person wants to shift?
So, so this is again, compared to the others at the table, startups do work very differently, and for us, our hiring policies are also different. So, I think, kind of relevantly to your question, for us, I'm in the space of immuno-oncology, which is a slice of the oncology industry, which is a little far away from biopharma, which is kind of, a larger sector. So in very specialty regions like this, for us, relevance of what you did in academia matters, and also the, the kind of project work that you would have done, kind of skill sets that you would have, kind of done on the bench would matter, and not as much as what is it that, how many years have you worked in a particular thing. Those are things that we do look at.
So, as Kavita said, it will be important what you have done in academic field. But again, it depends. Are you talking about a research career or a teaching career? So if it's a research career,
Teaching.
Research. Yeah. So in research. You have to look at two things. One is what is the specific thing that you were involved in, and if it is very relevant to our area of work, certainly it would be very attractive to a company to get somebody who already knows that field. And second, if it is not necessarily directly relevant, it comes down to like a fresh PhD, for instance, who is not necessarily in the same area that you want in. Are you a good researcher, right? It doesn't matter what you did in the research. I mean, hopefully it's something related, it's not completely unrelated, but even if it's not specifically what we want to do, if you're a good researcher, that means you can take a problem, you can analyze it, you can find a methodology to attack it, and you go diligently and you can solve those problems. I think, there's no barrier for people from academia to move into industry jobs. If it's a teaching career, yeah, I mean, honestly speaking, it gets counted for a little less. So if you have a 5 years experience, you won't really be treated, honestly speaking, as a person with 5 years industry experience would be if it's a teaching career. But if it's a research, and if you can demonstrate that you are a good researcher, I think there's no barrier.
Can I just follow? How about teaching in maybe a training, in the training? Right? How about a teacher gets involved in the training programs in your companies? Is it possible?
So I'll take on that. So we do have a lot of teaching jobs to be done, be it standard operating procedures, or there are a lot of things which we are making portal now. So in that we are actually seeking help of people who can speak well, who can articulate things in a manner which is understandable. Also, I have seen some career transitions in the field of medical writing and stuff like that, working really well.
Okay. Any other question? So no hands up. So let's ask another question to the panelists, and before that, let's ask a bunch of questions to you. What hobbies do you have? You must have some hobbies, right? Anyone wants to share what hobbies they have? Yeah? Microphone, please. State your name.
My name is Ashu Srivastava. I have done my PhD over here itself. So my hobby is to accept the challenge. It can be anything.
Hobby है? Should we accept that as a hobby? Like, कुछ गाना वाना, कुछ खेलना, कुछ कूदना.
Savings.
Huh?
Savings.
Saving money is your hobby. Very good. Thank you. Anyone else wants to share their hobby? Because I'm going to come to this question to the panel later, but please share your hobbies.
Hello everyone. I am Harshvardhan Agarkar, pursuing PhD in ISO. So my hobby is playing basketball.
And कहाँ खेलते हो?
Here, so the next.
गली में.
Just next to the.
अच्छा.
Just next to the. So they.
And what is the highest level of basketball you have achieved?
I played for nationals.
Different nationals. Congratulations. Thank you. Very good. Anyone else?
Painting and dancing.
Okay. Anything in that you've accomplished?
Yeah, so in dancing I have performed in films and albums also. I have, yeah.
कौन सी picture?
वहाँ तेरा क्या कहना एहसास and album दिलन मेहंदी's album. So
इसको तो जॉब नहीं देना चाहिए ना? Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else? The bar is raising. Any hobbies? बोलो यार, बेशर्मी से बोलो. कोई हॉबी नहीं है क्योंकि बार हो गई, इसने तो एक्टिंग कर ली, इसने नेशनल बास्केटबॉल खेला. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Please, I need 7. I just got 2. It's going to be relentless unless 5 people more tell their hobbies. It's going to be the most boring 5 minutes. She said traveling, so I got 3.
Hello sir. So my hobbies are, I like traveling. I like watching web series. So I watch a lot of them. In all the spare time I watch so much that I stopped sleeping one day. So entire 24 to 48 hours I watch series.
Oh,
Hostel mein बैठ के. Then I like photography. I also troll, make memes.
Make memes? Okay, who have you made memes of?
I've made memes of all my classmates, all the my colleagues, so everyone in the entire 2 years what I've spent in ICT.
Ratnesh, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? 2 more maybe? Yeah? This way, wait for the mic.
I like singing. I'm learning Indian classical music.
एक तो गाना ही पड़ेगा. थोड़ा सा एक गा दो, थोड़ा सा. गा दो यार, मैं तेरे साथ गाता हूँ. चलो. कौन सा गाना गाएंगे? No, गा दो. I'm there with you.
Which song to sing? The classical?
कोई भी.
Can we sing a solo song?
एक ही लगता है. 10 मिनट नहीं गाना है. 1 सेकंड गाना है.
दिल दे के दर्दे मोहब्बत लिया है, सोच समझ के ये सौदा किया है मैंने. ओ मैंने प्यार किया है, मैंने प्यार किया है.
Oh, क्या Thank you so much. So the question for the panel is, in relation to this, is how important is the stuff that you do outside of the study, job, all the overall personality of the individual important in getting a job? Should they write hobbies in their CV?
I certainly, when I review CVs, I definitely give a lot of weightage to extracurricular things that you've mentioned. Maybe not so much binge watching of web series, but if you played basketball, if you've taken part in art, dance, drama, written something, you've been an editor of the school journal or a school magazine or anything of those sorts. I personally give a lot of importance to that, and I think because it shows several characteristics and several characters of that person. It says that they have a passion which they are willing to pursue, and as Shreyas mentioned, to excel in any field it requires hard work. So it says that you are willing to put in that hard work, because if you are graduating with good marks, you are doing your master's, PhD or whatever, and you are doing something else, it is obvious that you have actually taken a lot of effort. You have woken up early, stayed late, spent weekends, gone out and done stuff. So it says that you are, you work towards your goals. It's also good for your own, it's more likely that in an organization you're going to be more participative, you will be a team player, especially if you have been in any kind of a team sport, or if you have been in any of these kinds of activities. It's more likely that you are outgoing, you meet people, you work with other people. So there are a lot of good qualities that actually show if you have got these hobbies, and I would strongly encourage you to write those, especially if you have done something at a, you played the nationals or you played at a competitive level or anything like that.
No, I fully endorse it. If you actually look, when you interview people, when you talk to people, you generally see that there is a difference in a certain set of people who've actually been a part of something beyond just their academics. It comes through even in their personality, in the way they talk, the way they conduct themselves, the way they are confident about how they are doing things. It comes across in the mannerisms that they display. I have usually seen that any individual who's played a team sport, like Dhananjay said, actually is a very good candidate to be looked at, because he knows the value of using the other team players' strengths and playing to that, so that it works in the interests of the team, which is a quality that is required when you are working as a group, because you don't have all the skill sets yourself. So yes, that is something that as a schooling system, and Dr. Pandit has just come in here. So I would say our schooling system does have its strengths, but it does not necessarily focus on the extracurricular part to the extent it needs to. And I think if it does, bring in that emphasis for those of you who have those skills, it would greatly help in building your character and personality. It would really help you as you progress into industry as well.
I think for a startup, I can tell you it's huge brand building. I'm an ultra-marathoner and a triathlete myself, and I can see that when we hire, the first thing that a candidate kind of comes across and says is that I do 5Ks, I do 10Ks. So they do.
Well, let me interrupt for a second. This is just too trivial. She said it really fast. She runs 100 kilometers. Just give her a hand. 100 kilometers. Who runs? Only insane people run 100 kilometers.
Very true. Very true. So much so that my investors said that we have a key man insurance. Do not bike to work. Do not run to work. So yeah, so I think from what you've done, whether it be in school or college, one, it is important to pursue these things. I think it gives you an overall dimension to your own character. And then the other is to put it out there. We as Indians have this innate ability of not talking about ourselves in its entirety. You only talk about accomplishments. What you do, which is also a part of your persona, need not be highly competitive accomplishments, but it's worth talking about. So I would definitely encourage you to put it out there, even if you think it's trivial, to put it out there. And I can tell you from startups, these shape and brand us. And we, especially given our backgrounds in sport, we hire like that. A lot of people actually hone in on us because of what we do.
Thank you. You want to add? Okay, so Dr. Pandit, thank you for coming. Thank you very much. Do you mind if we ask people to ask you questions? Yeah, please ask Dr. Pandit any question you want. This मौका है, पूछ लो. हाँ सर को यहाँ बिठा लो. Please ask Dr. Pandit any question you want. You have literally 5 minutes. Ratnesh has told me we have to wind up for another talk. This is an amazing opportunity. Any question you want. Okay. Can anyone think of any question? So let's start by asking Dr. Pandit the question we asked the panel.
Before you ask the questions, I would like just to add to whatever was being said.
Yes, please.
I think this differentiation between extracurricular activities and emphasis on academics is getting very much polarized these days. In the older days, it was not the case because the schools and the colleges used to have specific programs essentially which were responsible for team building exercises. You would have, other students would have a lot of free time to form teams and get involved in the multiple activities involving their friends. But today, we are making too much emphasis on academics and marks, which needs to be changed. So we have two sets of people in school, those who are interested only in academics and those who are interested in only extracurricular. You will rarely find a student who is trying to give a balanced effort to both these, which is absolutely necessary for development of leadership skills. At the right time, you should get involved in the right kind of activities, be it academic, be it extracurricular, because these are the learning days of you, and this involvement is what is going to teach you continuously. And it is, in my opinion, equal responsibility of the parents to make them understand that in a longer run, what is important. Marks will probably get you across for the first interview, but after that, what you really know and what you can do is the one which is going to count, rather than whether you came first or second or merit holders or what, doesn't matter. That just gives you a call for interview. Beyond that, it doesn't make any difference.
Thank you for sharing. And you heard it from him directly. So, jao khelo kudo. So, sir, one question that we had asked the panelists as some information for the prospective candidates who are applying for jobs. What was your inflection point in your career that was very critical that allowed your career to succeed the way it has? Any things the things that happened in your career?
Patience. When I say patience, I mean that whatever work which you do, you always get a reward for that particular work. Not necessarily at the time when you want that reward, but eventually you get that reward. So if you have that patience and keep on working, you will eventually be rewarded. But sometimes you will get a reward at a time when you can't use that particular reward. There's no point in getting $1 million when you are about to die and everything is going to happen. So there is a time, but the patience is extremely important for you to be able to take failures in stride and learn from the failures. So the point of inflection which you said, I'll tell my own story. I did my BTech from IT BHU, now IIT Banaras Hindu University. I had an opportunity to go abroad and do my master's and PhD. Always wanted to be in academics, come what may. But then due to some family circumstances, I could not go abroad. So I took admission in ICT, UDCT then, and did my PhD and have never regretted it. And I still remember words of Professor Sharma at that time in 1980. One of my friend who was to go to US had a party and Professor Sharma had come there, and he asked me, what are you doing? I said, I have taken admission in UDCT. And he told me, you see after 10 years where you are going to be and where he is going to be. And in terms of academic recognition, because I wanted to be, it was far more rewarding. So choice of the place, having patience is the one which will allow you to get the benefits and the fruits of your efforts, which you can enjoy it much, much longer. I happen to be in a position where I have always enjoyed doing what I enjoy doing and get paid for it. So that is not necessarily the condition and situation with everybody. But any job which you take up, you just got to have pluses and minuses. As long as the pluses is more than 50%, you can continue working. If the minuses become more than 50%, you can think in terms of changing a job.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Any questions for any one of the panelists? Any questions? Okay, oh yeah, please.
Thank you, all of you. I just want to know that Pandit sir has told us the experience that from how they have grown to this level. So, after so much years of experience, you have gained, you have earned that knowledge and you are telling us. But what you did when you are like us, you are standing like us in the audience and you are listening to some great persons and how you took that their experience and used in your struggle, basically.
Good question. Anyone?
So I'll share one experience. Just started my career with Pokart actually, and we had a vice president, and I used to get a lift to go home in the evening sometimes when I'm lucky. Otherwise, I used to catch bus. So from Bhandup plant to Western Express Highway, it's quite a journey. So he had a pass for the shorter route. So he used to say like many times that if you disagree with a person at a leadership role, first try to understand what he is doing, why he is doing, and what are the circumstances. Walk 10 steps with him, and then if you want to differ, then differ with his permission. And it has helped me a lot.
And just to answer your question, because I was sitting like you are sitting at some point in time, I think the 2-3 things, and I used to also sit in the auditorium and listen to lectures from people who used to come. But even the faculty who used to talk at the auditorium and others, if you look at the theme that's been there in Udicity, it's always been about how can we improve efficiency, how can we reduce cost, how can we make things more affordable, right? That's been the general theme. How can we make science more relevant? How can we make technology which is more applicable to industry and solve the challenges? So when I actually got the opportunity to work, when I actually got the opportunity to sit for an interview, and I actually did get selected, I found a company which had the same values, that we were trying to do something affordable. So when I actually went and spoke to my research supervisor, my guide, Professor Joshi, and he said I have actually been selected, I wasn't very thrilled that I had actually been recruited, because he said that was not what I wanted you to do. Then I had to explain to him that these are the reasons, these are the values that I have co-linked. This is what UDCT does. I see the same values. If you still think I shouldn't do this, then I will not do it. So, but as you rightly said, 20 years down the line, it works out the right way.
I have a slightly different experience to share. So when I started off my career with Biocon actually, and Kiran that time had a lot more time than now, and she used to spend lots of time kind of mentoring us, just speaking to us in the cafeteria, etc. There was this one particular thing that she said, and this is really early on, I had just kind of graduated, started working with Biocon. At that point, she kept stressing on something that I thought was really relevant, women, diversity, workforces, getting women back into workforces, etc. So for me as a student, I'm like, yeah, sure, I'm not married, I don't have any, kind of liabilities and contingencies, etc. So getting to work and getting kind of higher orders into my career was not a big deal. Now thinking of it, it makes so much sense. And for somebody early on to bring this perspective, I was truly blessed to have that very early and to be mentored like that. So that for me was pivotal. And I think there are very few and rare chances that you get things like this, and therefore mentorship, which is something that I mentioned before, becomes very critical.
Okay, so unless there's any burning question, is there anyone? No show of hands yet. Okay, so we want to thank the panelists for a wonderful session. A lot of very good information all of you got and took notes, right? And thank you for the organizers for organizing such a fantastic forum, for having a good discussion on getting a job, maintaining a job, and how to succeed in a job. So thank you very much.
Thanks to all of you for such a wonderful panel session. Now I request Ratnesh sir to give a token of gratitude to all the panel members. So first we have Dr. Dhananjay Patankar. So I request Ratnesh sir to give a token of gratitude to Dr. Dhananjay Patankar.